The incoming president of the United States of America is, in the wake of his sentencing this afternoon in a New York City courtroom, officially a convicted felon. And it matters not at all. Let's dive in. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's episode of Mary Trump Live. It's good to have you here. So finally, for one thing at least, Donald was sentenced in a New York courtroom today. But is that really what happened? Take a look at this clip.
At a hearing just moments ago in Manhattan Supreme Court, New York Judge Juan Merchan issued his decision. The sentence, unconditional discharge covering all 34 counts. Here's what that means. No prison time, no fine. As expected, this is the most lenient sentence possible. Mr. Trump was not there in person, but he did appear virtually on a live stream into the court just before the sentence was handed down, calling this, in his words, a very terrible experience. Remember, Mr. Trump was convicted last May on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in what prosecutors said was an attempt to cover up a $130,000 hush money payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. Again, this morning, Mr. Trump has denied any wrongdoing. And now, a milestone, one that makes history. The president-elect is now officially a convicted felon, 10 days before his inauguration.
Woohoo! In making his decision to sentence Donald to nothing, Merchan was sort of caught between a rock and a hard place. He had to take into consideration the ruling of the corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court last summer regarding presidential immunity, and he had to take into account the fact that Donald is going to be sworn in next week. And he said, basically, it is the office of the presidency which imposes legal protections, a factor that overrides all others. Merchan did get one dig in, and I hope it stung. He concluded that, quote, it is the legal protections afforded to the office of the president of the United States that are extraordinary, not the occupant. Anyway, Donald, of course, sees himself as the victim, and he is pitching fits. He pitched a fit at the courtroom. He's pitching a fit on social media. Take a look at one of his posts in the immediate aftermath of the hearing. I won't read the whole thing, don't worry. But part of it reads, quote, the radical Democrats have lost another pathetic un-American witch hunt after spending tens of millions of dollars and wasting over 6 years that should have been spent on protecting New Yorkers from violent, rampant crime, et cetera, and coordinating with the Biden-Harris Department of Injustice and lawless weaponization, and bringing completely baseless legal and fake charges against your 45th and 47th president, me. I was given an unconditional discharge. Wow, well done, plurality of Americans who thought putting this guy back in the White House was a good idea. It, of course, should surprise absolutely no one that the most aggrieved man who has ever lived, a man who knows the difference between right and wrong, but refuses to accept responsibility for any of the wrongs he's committed, holds himself always to be beyond accountability. With today's so-called sentencing, it's extremely difficult to argue with that assessment. There's been some other stuff going on in the legal world. The Jack Smith report, or at least one volume of it, the volume of it pertaining to January 6th, will be released despite personal pocket corrupt Eileen Cannon's attempts to block the release of both volumes of the report. The 11th Circuit denied Donald's bid to block this release. There will be a 3-day hold, so alleged Attorney General Merrick Garland cannot release the report until Sunday, although last I checked, he is still refusing to release the volume of the report that we really do need to see, and that is pertaining to the stolen documents case. Before I continue, I just want to ask you to take a quick second to like and share this video. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and after you do that, click on the bell so you will be notified every time new videos drop. If you're listening to the podcast, please follow our show and give us a 5-star review, because it really does help other people find our content. All right, so TikTok there's a big case regarding whether or not TikTok is going to continue to be allowed to exist in the United States in front of the Supreme Court. The court heard oral arguments in TikTok versus Garland. Now, the outcome of this case, as I said, will determine whether or not TikTok can continue operating in the United States under its current ownership, or it must comply with the divestment requirements. Now, this is essentially a case, at least as TikTok would have us believe. For them, it's a case about the First Amendment. The Justice Department would have us believe that it is a case about national security. So far, it looks like the justices in both wings are inclined to agree with the Department of Justice. There are serious concerns that have been voiced by the justice that the app's data collection practices are a danger to United States national security, and the possibility that Beijing is accessing sensitive user information. Of course, they seem less inclined to be convinced by TikTok's claims on First Amendment grounds. So it remains to be seen. Obviously, we have to await the decision. The court has said this could happen as soon as January 19th. Already we see the implications for TikTok competitors. The stocks of Snap, Pinterest, and Meta platforms have all gained in the context of this potential ban. Donald has his own thoughts about this. He reiterated his promise to protect TikTok and could decline to enforce the law upon taking office on January 20th if the Supreme Court does not act in advance of his inauguration. Cannot imagine why Donald wants to keep TikTok going in the United States of America. On a more serious note, it looks like the Laken-Riley Act will pass in the Senate. A vote was taken to advance it in the Senate, a bipartisan vote of 84-9. This bill was named for Laken-Riley, a 22-year-old nursing student who was murdered by an undocumented immigrant. Obviously, violent crime of any kind is something that we want to prevent, but this act is not exactly what it seems. It stokes concerns about crimes committed by individuals in the country illegally, and actually magnifies, or I should say, exaggerates them. I want to read a paragraph from something Mark Joseph Stern wrote in Slate magazine, because it really gets to the heart of what's going on here. And it will make you wonder why Democratic senators are going along with this. Quote, the Laken-Riley Act would penalize immigrants who live and work in the United States legally, subjecting them to indefinite detention without being convicted or even charged with a crime. And it would transfer a massive amount of power to state attorneys general and district court judges who could, upon a state's request, ban the issuance of all visas to residents of entire countries, like India, unquote. It will also curtail legal immigration and subject law-abiding immigrants to detention and deportation. Now, one of the aspects of this bill that is also alarming is that it seeks to punish undocumented workers for minor infractions. This is very similar to the broken windows policy that was enacted under Rudolph Giuliani in New York City in the 80s, which led to the incarceration of young Black men in wildly disproportionate numbers. So we need to keep our eye on this one. And I sincerely wish that Democrats would stop going along with Republicans because they think this is what Americans want to hear. Democrats have been allowing Republicans to craft the narrative around immigration for far too long, just as they continue to do on issues related to gun safety, and just as they used to do regarding abortion rights. And it has not gotten us any place good. We also have news today that a federal judge in Kentucky has invalidated the Biden administration's Title IX regulations. These expanded protections against discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity in schools. The judge ruled that the Department of Education exceeded its authority and labeled the regulations, quote, arbitrary and capricious, unquote, and in violation of constitutional principles. I didn't realize that the Constitution mentioned trans rights, and I also didn't realize that having trans children allowed to participate fully in their educations was a threat to anybody. Listen, this decision reverses a key policy lauded by civil rights advocates, but of course is opposed by Republicans. With the Biden administration term nearing its end, the incoming Trump administration will likely defend this judge's decision, and Republican lawmakers are fully expected to push for legislation defining under Title IX sex as assigned at birth. This is a very awful, horrifying development. Trans people in this country are among the most at risk for violence, the most at risk for self-harm, the most at risk for discrimination. This should not be allowed to happen. Unfortunately, however, I'm assuming, of course, the Biden administration will appeal it to the Supreme Court. I do not have any faith that the corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court will overrule the decision of the Kentucky judge. Just as in a slightly related matter, I don't think they will have any problem overturning Obergefell, which is the case that brought us marriage equality. I guess because Jim Jordan hasn't been getting enough attention lately, he, of course, is the House Judiciary Committee chair, who has never met a blazer he liked. He's indicated that investigations into Hunter Biden's activities may continue, even as President Biden's term concludes. Why am I mentioning this? I'm not mentioning it because I think it's necessarily important as a thing the Republican Judiciary Committee is doing. I don't. I mention it for two reasons. This is why President Biden pardoned his son. Not because he lied about it or not because he was trying to deceive anybody. He did it because he realized what Hunter Biden might be up against if Donald Trump got back into office. The other reason I mention it is this. There have been so many red flags for Democrats. This should be yet another one. I'm just wondering when they're going to start paying attention. Democrats in Congress. Republicans don't care about civility. Republicans don't care about bipartisanship. If you continue to play by rules that no longer exist, Republicans will punch you in the face and steal your lunch money. So please grow up and understand the fight we are fighting. It's going to be so much harder for the rest of us here on the ground if those of you with actual power don't step up for us. All right, I want to turn our attention to what's continuing to unfold in California. There was a lull in the fierce winds that have been largely responsible, in addition to the extraordinarily dry conditions for spreading these wildfires so quickly. But unfortunately, the winds have intensified yet again. A new fire broke out, and the Palisades fire has only been the largest of them, which is responsible for at least half of the deaths and property damage, continues to rage. It's again a 6% contained. Evacuations continue, as do the fires. Donald, because I guess now he's feeling all empowered since having gotten away with yet another crime, continues to spread misinformation about the fire. He writes this: Governor Gavin Newsom, that actually makes me want to punch somebody in the face, should immediately go to Northern California and open up the water main and let the water flow into his dry, starving, burning state instead of having it go out into the Pacific Ocean. It ought to be done right now. No more excuses from this incompetent governor. It's already far too late, unquote. All right, well, I guess just from a logic perspective, if it's too late, then why bother? But also the idea that there is some magical fount of water, like a spout, some huge spigot in Northern California that Governor Newsom has just decided not to access. is certifiably insane. Okay? Let's be clear. This is happening because of catastrophic climate change. This is happening because of a tragic combination of drought. That part of California has not seen rain for 3 months, and an early onset of the Santa Ana winds, which again have been fierce. We're talking about sustained winds of up to 60 miles per hour and 80 to 100 mile per hour gusts. These are the worst possible conditions if you don't want wildfires to happen where you live. Okay. So the other reason the fires have raged out of control is because there is literally no water system in the world, according to CNN, that could have handled the Los Angeles fires. Water demand spiked fourfold, if not more, when these fires started, which led to a drop in water pressure, which made it difficult for there to be enough pressure to drive water out of hydrants. So the hydrants weren't empty. There just wasn't the physics. I don't understand the physics of it entirely, but it has to do with a drop in water pressure, which made it harder to access the water. That's the problem. Not that California suddenly ran out of water. Okay. And it's not because of excessive environmental regulations. It's not because of poor governance. It's not because of anything except climate change, which Republicans from Donald Trump on down continue to try to convince Americans is a hoax. The hoax is that they are leading Americans to disbelieve in something that will harm all of us, that will make all of our lives more expensive and harder to live. That's the hoax. So we have to hope that this situation is resolved as quickly as humanly possible. What we can be certain of, because politics aside, from every indication I've seen, Governor Newsom is a very competent leader of his state. And it's not just him, of course. There are firefighters all over the state. We have firefighters from Canada, firefighters from Mexico, and other states going out to California to help end the fires, right? Everything is being done. And for Donald to sit on the sidelines and take pot shots is just despicable, because all he's interested in is scoring political points. He couldn't give a shit about the people who are actually suffering on the ground, right? So the other thing to remember is once the fires are out, there are going to be months, if not years, of healing here. So we need to remember that. Again, there are plenty of organizations looking for donations. Chef Jose Andres's World Central Kitchen is out there. We have the American Red Cross. There is the Greater Los Angeles Humane Society, because there are many, many, many displaced pets. There are people who, for practical reasons, were unable to bring their pets with them. Imagine being in that situation. And of course, not only the firefighters are suffering, but so too are their families. And so too are the people who have been displaced and those who have lost everything. Okay, that wraps up the main part of the show tonight, but I would love to take a look at your comments because it has been one of those days. I keep saying we have to pace ourselves, but I guess I had to figure out how because it's unrelenting. From Angela, the courts are going to reap what they sow because this one man will destroy the United States catastrophically. I wholeheartedly concur, Angela. And man, is he well on his way. Because again, the nerds and I had a live emergency session during the sentencing hearing. And we were talking about that very issue. Donald isn't starting from where he was in January 2017. He has a running start here and a whole different band of sycophants and fascists ready to do his bidding. So yeah, the whirlwind is upon us. From Brenda, there is no such thing as justice, nor is there a justice system anymore. If no jail time applies to Donald as a citizen, then that will set a precedent for everyone. Yeah, Brenda, I have to agree. There is something quite distressing about knowing that one of the reasons people can now choose to be president of the United States is that that means they get a get out of jail free card. I mean, it's just incredible, right? So incredible and depressing. I mean, I have to be honest with you. I think there has always been a two-tier justice department in this country, almost always to the disadvantage of people of color and the poor. But now we know with absolute certainty that one man, and the worst man, is above the law. From Margaret, I don't mind the tickety talk. I don't know. Well, okay, cool. I mean, I guess there are arguments that could be. Listen, I like TikTok. I like how weird TikTok is. Like, I used to do TikTok lives, and if TikTok survives this, I'll do TikTok lives again. It's really fun. I mean, it's just a bizarre way to spend time, and it's a great app. However, there are conditions there. It's a great app, except for the fact that apparently it's poisoning the minds of our children and is potentially an avenue for China to commit espionage. So I don't know. We'll have to see how that unfolds. But it would be quite ironic if Donald Trump is the one to save TikTok, even if the Supreme Court decides that it should be banned. Oh my word. This is the world in which we live, guys. Richard, all American people who have committed crime should be allowed to get out of prison if Trump got out of jail free. Got out of jail free. All Americans should fight for the same rights. I can't disagree, especially, I mean, not for violent crimes, but yeah. I mean, if I were Michael Cohen, I don't know. I would want to sue somebody because he spent almost 3 years in prison for the crimes he committed on Donald Trump's behalf. I mean, I've said this before. It's literally like throwing the hitman in jail, but letting the guy who hired him go free. It's just completely crazy. And, legal experts started talking about this when the corrupt illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court handed down the ruling on presidential immunity. They basically, it is going to take years to untangle all of this and see how it applies, when it applies, if it applies, to whom it applies. So, again, if the Democrats ever get into power, if the first thing they do is not to expand the court and impose an serious ethical guidelines and impose term limits, I don't know. I don't even know what to say at that point. From Mary, why don't we all just go out and break all the laws we want? What does it matter? Well, are you president-elect of the United States? And is your name Donald Trump? So please, Mary, don't do that, because you'll get arrested. You'll get arrested and put in prison, jail, whatever. You'll get indicted, you'll get tried, you'll get convicted, and you'll get sentenced. And at your sentencing, I'm pretty sure the judge isn't going to say, yeah, your sentence is nothing. So don't break laws. Although seriously, if I were a parent raising a very young child right now in America, how do you explain this? I don't know. From Carol, so why should anyone respectfully refer to him as president? Nobody should, ever. See, notice how I stopped myself before finishing that sentence? No, he's not. I'm going to tell you something. I have never referred to him that way. First of all, he's my uncle, so I call him Donald, because it would be really weird for me to call him anything other than the thing I've called him for my entire life. However, I won't even use the word president in a sentence with him until after this election. So the reason for that is this. I use it as a condemnation of the people who voted for him. I use it as if it were poison. That is what we have done to ourselves. We have inflicted him on us again, and it is disgraceful. But in terms of, I mean, look, you could also argue that this time around, unlike 2016, he won the popular vote. He won the electoral college. You can say it's legitimate. You can disagree with that. I don't think it's legitimate, not for the reasons a lot of people think. I think it's illegitimate because he should never have been allowed to be a candidate in the first place. He's an insurrectionist. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment forbids him from seeking office, elected office of any kind. And yet, here we are. That, to me, is why he is illegitimate, and you should never, ever refer to him that way. So I'm with you, Carol. From Amatz, the world should boycott and sanction the U.S. if Donald does not go to federal prison. Well, then that means that they're going to boycott us and sanction us. Listen, that is not happening. We know there is no way Donald is ever going to federal prison or prison of any kind, and that is a disgrace. That is a massive failure of our justice system. It is a personal and professional failure of Merrick Garland. History will not look kindly upon him because he actually could have done something, and instead he sat on his hands and allowed all of this travesty to unfold. However, the rest of the world will, I mean, I don't know how long it will take to restore a reputation between the fact that he's committed all these crimes, got elected, isn't being punished, and his, new goals of imperialism. Our allies must just be thinking rightly that we have lost our damn minds. From David, if Donald had owed money to anyone in medieval times, he would have been put in debtor prison. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't wish we had debtor prison because it was cruel and horrific. And of course, only impacted the poor. So, but yeah, I mean, the idea that this guy whose wealth has been based upon, just getting massive loans in the amounts of hundreds and hundreds of $1 million from his daddy and huge loans from the banks that he never paid back, that is just not the way it's supposed to be. From Janet, the felon actually believes that there is a magic faucet. Yeah, he's got this bizarre obsession with water pressure, and showers. And yeah, now there's some huge spigot in Northern California that, for reasons that remain a mystery, Governor Newsom has just refused to access. We, I think, are going to start, one of our names for Donald is going to be the felon in chief. Is that right? I think that's one of them that we're floating. So, hey, you know what? In the comments, just let us know if you have a special nickname you would like to see us use for Donald. From Paula, FDJT simply doesn't understand about water, like his blabbing about a shower head, dishwashers, and washermen. Again, yeah, just a weird obsession. Obviously, it is not the worst thing about him, but it's really friggin' disturbing. All right, we are almost at the end of the show, so I just want to take a second to thank a couple of our super stickers. AJ, thank you so very much. Mary, awesome. You guys have no idea how much we appreciate your donations. Really helps us keep this going. And thank you so much for joining me tonight on a Friday night at the end of a ridiculously busy news week. I think instead of pacing ourselves, we just need to start doing breathing and meditation exercises. I think that might be the most the healthiest way to go about this. So please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on a podcast, follow us and give us a 5-star review. Again, it helps tremendously. And I will be back here Sunday night live for Ask Mary Anything Within Reason. That's also at 6 p.m. Eastern. And we've got a couple of videos dropping tomorrow. In the meantime, everybody, thanks for being here. Stay safe and be kind. See you soon.